Thank you, Madam Clerk. I will call the meeting to order. Welcome everybody to our committee of the whole meeting, January 6th at 5 o'clock. I will start off with our land acknowledgement statement. We acknowledge with respect the history, spirituality, and culture of the Aniashinaabeg, the people of the three fires known as the Odawa, Ojibwe, and Potawatomi nations who have inhabited this land from time immemorial. I further give thanks to the Chippewa Saugeen and the Chippewa of Neuwas, now known as Saugeen Ojibwe Nation, as the traditional keepers of this land. We also recognize the Métis and Inuit whose ancestors shared this land and these waters. May we all, as treaty people, live with respect on this land and live in peace and friendship with all its diverse people. Approval of the agenda. Is there any add-ons to our agenda here tonight? Seeing none, the recommendation is that the agenda be approved as presented. Someone to move to put it on the floor, please. Moved by Councillor Colburn, second by Councillor Pringle. Is there any discussion on the motion before us? Seeing none, a show of hands, all in favor of the motion. Opposed, the motion is carried. Councillor Sullivan sends regrets, and I'm not sure where Councillor Barfoot is, and maybe Councillor Thompson might join us later on the meeting. Moving on to the agenda, declaration of pecuniary interest. You can clear anytime you see fit during the meeting. Public hearings, we have none. Delegations. The first delegation we have is from the Grey County Climate Action Plan. I now welcome Linda Swanson, Manager of Climate Change Initiatives, and Randy Schwarzer, Deputy CAO of the County of Grey, to highlight the Grey County Climate Action Plan. I'm going to turn it over to Ms. Swanson and Mr. Schwarzer. Please go ahead.
Thank you, Chair Burley. So thank you all for your time this afternoon and this evening. I'm going to share my screen and just provide a brief overview of the Climate Change Action Plan, Going Green and Grey, that County Council unanimously endorsed in the end of April, and speak a little bit about the opportunities we're going to have, hopefully, to collaborate and work together to move forward with the actions identified in the plan. So I know with all of the action that's already happening in the township of Georgian Bluffs, making the case for why it's important is perhaps not as needed, but there are certainly compelling reasons, both globally and locally, why we need to take action. We know from the most recent United Nations report that currently, if we do nothing, we're on track for a global warming of 3.2 degrees by 2050. And that's, only 3.2 degrees as an average, but what that looks like in Grey Bruce, Huron, according to a report from the Climate Risk Institute, is a doubling of heavy precipitation events by 2050. So twice as many of those kind of extreme rain or extreme snowfall events that we currently experience, which obviously has implications for flooding and the durability of our infrastructure. And similarly, days that are 30 degrees Celsius or hotter will increase by 20 per year. So almost another, 3 weeks per year of those very hot days. And we're already seeing financial impacts of these changes in our climate. We know that Ontario home insurance premiums have increased 64% in the last 10 years, in part in response to this increase in extreme weather. And the total Canadian claims for property damage tripled between 1996 and 2019, now up at $7.2 billion annually. So just to say that there's certainly financial reasons to be taking action locally, as well as our need to be a global player. So in recognizing these changes, Grey County joined the Partners for Climate Protection program, which is a national program co-hosted by the Federation of Canadian Municipalities and ICLEI Canada. And PCP has a 5-milestone framework for climate action planning. And by adopting Going Green and Grey, Grey County has completed the first 3 milestones and is now ready to work with all of our local municipalities to implement and track the plan. In creating the climate action plan, I sometimes joke, it certainly wasn't county staff, sitting alone in a room thinking about what would make the most sense and then putting it on paper. This was a 2-year process, in part extended because of the COVID-19 pandemic, where we really sought guidance and input from a broad variety of stakeholders. Deputy Mayor Carlton of your council chaired the Climate Change Task Force, which provided strategic direction for the Growing Green and Grey plan. And another municipal county point of contact is we've convened a climate change community of practice, where each of our local municipalities has a staff or multiple staff members identified, and we meet on a monthly basis just to share best practices and share information to make sure that we're able to learn from each other and not duplicate efforts. And beyond that sort of municipal and county involvement, we did connect with hundreds of residents across the county through online surveys, virtual meetings, and written submissions, as well as convening an external advisory group with representation from the public health sector and the social services sector to help us come up with the best plan possible. In December of 2020, we took an engagement findings report forward. So we took all of that input from all of those stakeholders, and there were really 11 key findings. And I'd like to highlight really the top 3 on this slide. And the thing we heard in almost every piece of feedback we received was the need to set ambitious targets aligned with the Canadian federal net zero target by 2050. And we also saw a real championing of the Grey County natural landscape and a desire to see us looking at nature-based solutions. And the third of those top 3 was a desire to see us prioritize actions. You'll see shortly that the plan is quite comprehensive. And so we took on board the fact that we needed to lay out a roadmap or milestones of priorities. But in response to that first engagement finding, the county targets, or the targets that were endorsed by County Council, are laid out on this slide. And what you can see is that by 2050, for the entire community of Grey County, we're looking to have achieved net zero greenhouse gas emissions. And one of the other pieces of engagement feedback was the need for mile markers. So to have interim targets sort of every 5 years to make sure that we're on track for that longer term net zero by 2050 goal. And one of the requests from County Council when we brought the plan forward was to really commit to that leading by example. And so the corporate target for Grey County operations is to have achieved net zero by 2045. Excuse me. And so what that means is really corporate owned, so county owned assets. So this would include county owned vehicles and county owned buildings. It would not include municipally owned buildings or fleets. That would be for each municipality to set their own corporate target. So obviously these are ambitious and necessary targets. So Going Green and Grey also lays out a set of 21 community actions. And I'm not going to go through all of them, but I think a takeaway from this would be to say that really every sector requires action. Unfortunately for us, there's no silver bullet. It's not if we just invest in electric vehicles or we just look at decarbonizing our buildings, we're going to be able to hit those targets. It's really a cross-sectoral investment and action that's needed. So one of the things we did, or our consulting team, ICLEI Canada, did on putting the plan together was analyze where the greenhouse gas reduction potential was across different actions. And so this slide, it reinforces, I think, the message I just spoke to, which is, again, we need to do everything. But each action is going to have a different potential greenhouse gas emissions reduction. And so you can see here that some of the areas of greatest opportunity include this yellow wedge around zero emissions vehicles. These top 3 wedges are all related to our built environment. So getting off fossil fuels and heating our buildings. And then also a huge amount of potential in our nature-based solutions. So our agricultural and our forest lands also identified on this slide. So taking on board that advice around prioritization, we really looked at 4 criteria to try and identify our priority actions. We looked at the relative greenhouse gas emission reduction potential, which is quite a mouthful, but where are we going to be able to really reduce our emissions? How much is it going to cost? So really that idea of bang for our buck, where are we going to be able to reduce emissions at a good price? And then 2 other factors, one being co-benefits. So where would investments also deliver things like job creation or improved air quality or other social benefit? And finally, where does the county have the most leverage? Where do we have levers where we're actually going to be able to make an impact? And based on those 4 criteria, we came up with some priority actions. So the first are our 4 foundational pillars. So these are 4 actions that are already underway at the county level that we know we need to continue and expand. And they together have the potential to reduce 40% of our cumulative emissions between now and 2050. So continuing with afforestation and habitat protection, continuing to build the capacity of our vibrant agricultural sector to decarbonize and to invest in land management and agricultural management best practices to sequester carbon, to continue to expand our waste and organics diversion, and finally, to continue our commitment to compact mixed-use development. Building on those 4 foundational pillars, we also identified 5 key next steps. So these are new endeavors that are going to be important to reaching our goals, which again, together can achieve almost 39% of our cumulative emissions. So between those 9 actions, that's almost 80% of our emission reduction. So one is to create a green development standard, working with all of the local municipalities. The second, similarly, is to work with local municipalities around a residential retrofit program, so providing the tools to our residents to reduce the emissions coming from their homes. Accelerate the zero emissions transportation, so looking at ways to get electric vehicle charging infrastructure across our region to show that we're an EV ready region and also support our residents in having access to charging as they need it. Develop a climate adaptation plan. So unfortunately, even when we take this bold and necessary action now, we're still going to be dealing with our changing climate as it's already happening. So coming up with a response to that. And then finally, something I know Georgian Bluffs is already well involved in, working around climate action engagement. So how do we get our residents involved and engaged with this issue? So my final slide is just a summary of the impacts when we're successful, hopefully, in this Going Green and Gray plan. So there's a few things I'd like to show. So this is looking at sort of success in 2050. So certainly there's a dramatic reduction in greenhouse gas emissions from our current baseline. But the things I'd really like to emphasize is there's also this 61% reduction in energy consumption. So we're not just talking about a lower carbon future, we're also talking about a more efficient future where we're using less energy because our homes are better insulated, our vehicles are more efficient. So it's really a smarter, more efficient future that we're talking about. And because of that efficiency, we're looking at a 41% energy cost saving community-wide. So this means our residents and business owners are going to be able to spend less on utilities to heat their buildings, less at the fuel pump as they're driving more efficient vehicles. So really talking about a lower carbon future that delivers benefit across our community in a number of different ways. So certainly lots more that I could say, but I'll pause there and thank you very much for your time and attention. And Randy and I are certainly happy to answer any questions.
Thank you for the great presentation, Ms. Swanson. Does the committee have any questions of either Randy or Linda? Seeing none right now, I guess I'm going to ask both of you a silly question, but it is a question. Helium is coming on board. It hasn't caught up to where electric cars are now. In 2050, there could be a lot of changes made between now and then. That would sort of help our climate plan, would it not?
Absolutely. I think it's fair to say that the plan is based on the best available current information. So right now, there's a lot of attention we're putting on electric vehicles because some of the commitments from the federal government, for example, that all new vehicle sales across Canada for passenger vehicles, light duty passenger vehicles, will be electric by 2035. So we're kind of responding to those federal commitments, but certainly in the heavy duty sector, hydrogen is a growing technology, and it's something that we're aware of and working, talking with organizations like the Nuclear Innovation Institute and some of the local businesses in our area, like Hydrogen Optimized, to make sure that as and when that technology is economically feasible, we're ready to participate in it.
Thank you, Linda. Welcome, Councillor Thompson. Is there any questions from the committee? Deputy Mayor Carleton, please go ahead.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Not a question, more a comment. I was trying to reread the county's plan today, and I see a lot of areas throughout that plan where we can certainly, as the municipality, kind of piggyback on that, or in some cases maybe support the county's plan, or there's support from the county for the municipality. So I think altogether it's a good thing going forward, and we definitely need it. And I like that it's a flexible plan, that it's going to evolve and adapt to changing needs over time. So thank you very much to both of you.
Thank you.
Thank you, Deputy Mayor. Is there any other concerns or questions from the committee? Seeing none, well, thank you, Randy and Linda, very much for your presentation tonight, and look forward to talking to you about this topic later. Thank you.
Thanks, everyone.
Thank you very much.
Okay, I'm going to move on for agenda. Our next on our agenda is Access E11 Resident Concerns Reporting Presentation. And it's going to be done by our clerk, Brittany Drury. Please go ahead. We have a technical error for people that are on the screen with a phone. A mic.
Hey, sorry about that. All right, I'm just going to share my screen and we can get started. Okay, thank you, Mr. Mayor. So this evening, we're going to move through a brief presentation to provide some information as well as a demonstration on the township's new work order management system entitled Access E11 that has been implemented for approximately a month internally and a few weeks externally at this point. So to begin, lay the foundation, what is Access E11? Essentially, in the bare bones version of Access E11, it is a work order management system. The system, being a citizen issue and relationship management system, was designed to provide municipalities a simple, cost-effective means to manage citizen requests. So it has four main pillars, the first being citizen services, complaint and issue management, the second being job assignment, the third being management and compliance reporting and evidence-based decision-making through the council horseshoe, and the fourth being citizen relationship management and contact management through interaction history. So essentially, Access E11 assists staff in following through on citizen issues by automating customized responses to residents and creating detailed metrics to assist not only staff but council in informing the future decision-making process at the township. So we started the process of implementing Access C11 in 2021 in April as part of phase 1 of the township's modernization process. That process came out of the COVID-19 pandemic and introducing more online services to our public to be more readily available and increase some internal efficiencies as well as external efficiencies. So since approval in April of 2021, staff have been working in the background to customize the platform to fit the township's needs, and more specifically working with each of our departments to ensure their portion of the system is customized to their needs to function to the highest ability. The report a concern feature went live on June 14th of 2022. Staff had been beta testing the program for about a month at that point. So we have been actively using the system for almost a month now. Now, you may be asking, what's a concern? What's a case? How do I use it? There's two ways for cases or concerns to be inputted into the system. The first is using the public reported concern tool that's publicly available on the website. The second is manual inputting by staff internally through receipt of concerns over the phone or by email. So the public is welcome to use either option, being the traditional call-in option, traditional email option, or the public form. Now, throughout implementation of this system, we have been encouraging the public to use the public form, given that it's available and it provides immediate response and immediate updates to the public. So what is a case? Simply put, a case is an action item. So I define it as anything that requires an action from staff or requires a follow-up from staff. So therefore, a good example would be missed garbage collection, or there's a pothole in my road. And as soon as someone creates a case within the system, the appropriate staff members are immediately notified. Now, this immediate notification happens in either of the two scenarios I outlined in the previous slide, being the internal notification or external notification. The benefit of the form that's publicly available on the website is the public has the opportunity to input their emails to receive automatic updates whenever updates are available in the system. So as soon as, let's say, for example, the public creates a case that their garbage was missed, their garbage collection was missed, they get an immediate notification that that issue has been forwarded to the correct staff. Then as soon as the staff act on that request, the resident receives immediate updates directly to their email address. So it's continually providing the public with regular updates and saving us from picking up the phone, calling them, and leaving voicemails, playing phone tag, etc. Now, of course, that remains an option. However, this just creates efficiencies both internally and for the public.
Brittany, does the program automatically send it to the appropriate department, or does somebody, a staff member, have to do that?
That is correct. The
Which,
back end of the system has been customized to automatically assign individual staff members to their respective cases. Okay? Thank you. You beat me to that point.
oh, sorry.
That's okay. So I have a couple of examples on this slide being the specific cases for each specific department. So for example, a missed garbage collection concern would go directly to the operations department for immediate follow-up. Further to that, any road maintenance requests, being there's a pothole on my road or my road needs grading, etc., that immediately goes to the operations department as well. And each case has a different time sensitivity and a different priority level associated with it. So it keeps staff accountable for regular follow-up and closing of the cases in an appropriate manner and a timeline. Okay? So now we're going to move through a brief demonstration of the system. So this is our main web page. There's two accesses to this report a concern function. First here, second, report a concern. So we're going to move through this form together so everyone can see how it works. So for today's example, I'm going to use my information. And you'll note that it automatically finds me Railroad 18 Georgia Bluffs. Now, the categories are automatically built in, and this is how the system decides who it's going to send the case to for follow-up. So for the purposes of today's example, I'm going to use a public works example. Oh, apologies. Public works, and you'll note that each has a further expansion option for more detailed selections. So for today's example, we're going to use the pothole classification. And you'll note that we had to create our own case so operations doesn't go looking for a pothole. So moving through the form, I then indicate my summary. Pothole located outside my home. Further details if required. The location of the issue, and I can include additional information, which I'll say in the left lane, headed north. I have the opportunity to upload photos to this form to provide more information, which I will do. Bear with me. And if I'm happy with it, I will hit submit. I do that. The MFIPA statement.
Brittany, will that form still submit if a part of it is not filled out?
The fields with asterisks beside them are required fields. If you do not fill out those fields, this form will not submit and you will get an error code. Okay. Sorry, picking the chimneys. Okay, and you'll see that we have successfully submitted our concern and we have a reference ID number. Now, for the purposes of this presentation this evening, I've already moved through each of the steps that I've outlined in the previous slides, being the automated responses that our public will see upon submitting a case. So first of all, this is what staff see, the assigned staff member sees as soon as a case is created that impacts their department. So this is what the operations department would see upon creation of a new pothole case in this example. So there's a link directly to the case as well as its priority and how soon it should be followed up on or closed. Now, externally, the submittee sees this provided to directly to their email address, so they know we have received their concern and will follow up. Now, every time I make a change to the case, being I update how quickly we will be on site to evaluate the damage or how quickly we anticipate to complete the works, the public receives that information directly to their provided contact information. So you'll note here that I've said staff are on site to evaluate the pothole. It will be completed upon receipt of the appropriate materials to complete the works. And I've given a date here. So this is a note that I in the back end have inputted that the public can see automatically to their email address. Now, when it's closed, I can again add another note saying pothole has been filled, I close off the case, and they're immediately notified that their concern has been taken care of.
May I ask a question?
You're supposed to be holding your questions to the end,
Oh, sorry. I
but please
apologize.
go ahead.
I'm just curious. If a person doesn't have an internet and they just put a telephone number, does the form still go through?
The form will still go through without an email address, yes.
Okay, thank you.
No problem.
No more questions until you're done.
So just to provide you a brief example, I've talked a lot about the metrics that this system can provide to help both staff and council inform future decisions in a strategically sound way. Now, this is just a very simple example of a chart and report that this system can create. The system can create something as simple as this or as detailed as Excel documents that evaluate trends in cases, etc. So the biggest benefit of this system outside of regulating responses and response times is the metrics it will provide this council, the community, and staff, not only to inform future decisions, but to inform future budget requests or budgetary allocations. So this is a report that I pulled from the system today that breaks down all of the cases that are currently active in Access C11 per their classification. So you'll note that a large chunk of it is with bylaw, being 91 current cases. Not all of those cases are active. That's just how many have existed in the system since development of it in June. Now, to date, there have been 545 cases inputted into Access E11 since the beginning of June, since we started beta testing. That is organization-wide, but as I said, the bulk of them are in the Bylaw Enforcement Division. The Bylaw Enforcement Division has been great at embracing this system and really using it to its full extent. There have been 23 public submissions through the Report of Concern tool since its go live date on June 14th, 2022. And again, I hope that through this presentation and with the encouragement of council, we can continue to encourage the community to use that tool to its fullest extent to ensure that our community is receiving regular updates on the concerns that they communicate through this office. And with that, Mr. Mayor, I'll open it up to any questions of council.
I have no questions. I've already asked mine. Council Colburn, please go ahead.
Thank you, Mayor Burley, and thank you, Brittany and staff. I think this is going to be a fantastic tool. It will help to, I think, help staff prioritize and show accountability to the ratepayers, and it will also help us in our decision making. You did note that one of the largest areas so far is bylaw enforcement, and that is no surprise to me. I guess my question is this, and I ask this because I've been called a couple of times just in the last few days. Where is the phone number to contact our bylaw enforcement team off hours? So if someone were to use this system to report a timely bylaw infraction concern, is this system being checked 24/7, or is there a different mechanism whereby a ratepayer should call the off hours bylaw enforcement team to get a timely response?
Madam Clerk?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor, and through to Councillor Coburn. First, if they're comfortable in using the Report of Concern tool, it is actively monitored as we do have weekend bylaw enforcement support throughout the summer, and they are immediately notified in the way that I demonstrated with that email. So they are consistently checking due to that immediate notification. So I will say that they've been using it very successfully to that effect. But with that being said, I do recognize that not all of our residents will be necessarily comfortable in defaulting to the online form. So they are, of course, always welcome to call into the office and be directly connected with bylaw enforcement over the weekends. So it's simply just calling into the township office and selecting the option for bylaw enforcement.
Okay, Council Colburn, follow up.
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Mayor. So folks seem to be confused about that line that they call through via telephone. Can that process appear on our website, because even though they may have the web page or the website, they may still want to make a phone call rather than type out a report of concern. Is that number, or can that number and the extension be put in a visible place on the very first web page of our municipal website?
Madam CEO or Madam Clerk, whatever.
Absolutely, we can add it to the homepage.
Madam CEO.
Yeah, and thanks, Mr. Mayor, and through you to council. I think we're in a period of transition as well. The beauty of the Access C11 system is it does go directly to our staff. The challenge with the phoning in is if they're responding to another call, our folks may actually get a voicemail message and not be sure whether or not their issue has been addressed. So, I mean, we can certainly have both. The beauty of the system that we're talking about now is they get immediate notification that we've received their concern, and somebody will act upon it. On the other side, for myself, I'll just speak for some of the features from a staffing perspective. Is our staff can add other staff members in as contacts. So when they're following up on a citizen's concern or issue, they can keep their colleagues in the loop of what's happening. So for instance, one of the bylaw responses this past weekend, myself and two other people were put in by our staff member, and we were getting regular updates. Every time they went out to do something or they followed up on something, we were getting those updates as well. So,
Thank you, Madam CEO. A question that happened to me, Madam Clerk. I did try using the Access E11 on a ratepayer's behalf. Most, like other council members, I do get phone calls from ratepayers concerned, and maybe suggest they use that program. It'd be a lot better. But if they simply can't do that, well, fine. I put it in. I put it in for the person. Yeah, all their information they give me and so on. I have no problem doing that. But where the downfall is that the system works so it only goes to the person that had the concern. I have no way as a mayor know whether it was followed up on and so on. And does it make sense what I'm saying?
yeah, through you, Mr. Mayor, I guess this is part of our transition and sort of change management, and appreciate that council members want to follow up on things for citizens. That's commendable. I think what we want to get to is that you feel confident and can trust that when you've put it in the system and assigned it to somebody, it's gone to a staff member and they're on it. And I guess from our standpoint, we see the most important closing the loop with the citizen who has the real concern.
And that makes perfect sense. It's just, I guess, for my own personal ability when it comes to a computer and so on, thinking maybe I made a mistake that it didn't go through.
Sure.
That's why.
Fair enough.
That's why I say that.
Fair enough.
Okay. Any other questions? Seeing none, Madam Clerk, it's a great program. It's very young, so it's going to take a bit of while to get used to, especially for young people like me. But anyway, it's great. Nice to see it happening, and we look forward to great success. So there's no other questions. Thank you very much, Madam Clerk. We'll move forward. So moving on with our agenda, we're down to correspondence. We have none. Staff planning. Excuse me. The first recommendation I have here is it has been demonstrated that proposed application inconsistent with the provincial policy statement 2020, the county official plan, and the towns of George and Bluffs zoning bylaw 2020 is recommended that application Z 0422 for Hutton and Company for land described as part lot 16, concession 5, Registered Plan 16R10169 Part 3 be approved. Someone to move, excuse me, someone to move, put it on the floor, please. Moved by Deputy Mayor Carlton, second by Councillor Thompson. Is there any discussion on the motion before us? Seeing none, a show of hands, all in favor? Opposed? The motion is carried. On to our next recommendation. The bylaw 2020-42 being the bylaw to establish a committee of adjustment and committee procedures be approved in draft and presented at the July 13th, 2022 meeting of council for adoption. Someone to move to put on the floor, please. Moved by Councillor Pringle, second by Councillor Barfoot. And it's, excuse me, I'm going to turn it over to our planning student, Ben. Please go ahead.
Got it. Thank you, Mr. Mayor, and good evening, everyone. This is the report regarding the change in structure to the Committee of Adjustment. So some background information. In December of 2021, Council directed staff to make all necessary changes to reflect the change in committee structure. The current committee is comprised of 6 members and 1 chair, all members being council. The new structure proposes a total of 4 members and 1 chair, with 3 being citizen members and 2 being sitting council members. Council members and citizen members will be appointed for the 4-year council term. The draft bylaw was influenced by the Committee of Adjustment bylaws in the Municipality of Grey Highlands, Municipality of Meaford, Town of Blue Mountains, and the Municipality of Kincardine. Applications will, so just a little bit of a background for the application recruitment process. Applications will remain open for a 5-week duration, starting July 14th to August 18th of 2022. Once council approves the bylaw, notices will be posted on the township's website, social media, and print advertisements in local newspapers. Staff have also prepared notices to be included in the July newsletter about the change in committee structure. Applications will be reviewed by staff along with the Secretary Treasurer, and applications will be compiled for a presentation to council for their consideration in closed session on August 31st of 2022. Council will then be required to pass a bylaw to appoint citizen members to the committee in September. The Committee of Adjustment, the first Committee of Adjustment meeting with citizen members on the committee is scheduled for December 13th of 2022. And I'd be happy to answer any questions you may have.
Thank you, Ben, for a great report. Does the council have any questions? See none. Ben, you've done a great job. Everybody understands.
Thank you.
If there's no questions, I'm going to call for a vote on the motion before us. A show of hands, all in favor? Opposed? The motion is carried. Thank you, Ben. Great job.
Thank you.
Moving on for our agenda, I'm down to our clerk's department. The recommendation is whereas council approved funding for modernization initiatives in the 2022 budget. Now, therefore, council hereby supports purchase and implementation of the Citizen Portal Public Engagement Portal and purchase and installation of fiber optic service at the Township Administrative Office to support ongoing IT modernization initiatives, and that the requirement for a request for proposal purchasing procedure be waived for both items. Someone to move to put on the floor, please. Moved by Councillor Colburn, second by Councillor Barfoot. Is there any discussion on the motion before us? Seeing none, a show of hands, all in favor of the motion? Opposed? The motion is carried. Moving on to our agenda, we're now to the CAO's department. The recommendation is that council approve expenditures of up to $200,000 for the Stormwater Management Reserve and Working Capital Reserve to affect drainage improvements and restoration on affected properties along Camel Rock Road. That the CAO be directed to source the most expeditious and cost-effective source material service to affect the drain improvements, restoration work along Campbell Rock Road, and that purchasing policy and requirements for a request for a proposal be waived. Someone to move to put on the floor, please. Moved by Deputy Mayor Carlton, second by Councillor Pringle. Is there any discussion on the motion before us? Seeing none, a show of hands, all in favor of the motion? Opposed? The motion is carried. Moving on for agenda, public question period. Madam Clerk, has there been any? No? Okay. We've no unfinished business. We've no new business. Notice of motion. This, Councilor Colburn, I believe you have notice of motion. Go ahead, please.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I do. As a result of hearing from several ratepayers recently regarding some disturbance caused to permanent residents by short-term accommodations in residential areas, I will be bringing forward a motion on this particular issue. You'll recall about a year ago, the spring of 2021, we had a student planner bring forward a report on short-term accommodations, and Council had a lot going on at the time. We accepted that report for information, but there was no action that came out of that report, and I would like us to revisit this issue. I used the same tool that the student planner used when he, I think it was he said that our numbers of short-term accommodations had stayed relatively consistent over the past 3 years, around 80 in the municipality. I went in and checked the tool, and it's now showing 100 short-term accommodations in Georgian Bluffs, and that's just over the past year. That's a 25% increase, and I don't think that should be a surprise to anyone either. I think we're going to get more and more concerns expressed, and I think Council does need to do a little bit more of a deep dive into this issue, and I will be bringing that motion forward likely towards the end of August. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Colburn. Look forward to your notice of motion. So we're now moving on our agenda. We're now going to go to a closed session. The committee of the whole move into closed session at 5:50 with CEO and clerk to discuss 1, a position plan, procedure, criteria, or instructions to apply to the negotiation carried on or to be carried on by or on behalf of the municipality or local board. Someone to move to put on the floor, please. Moved by Councillor Thompson, second by Councillor Barfoot. Is there any discussion on the motion before us? Seeing none, a show of hands, all in favor? Opposed, the motion is carried. We are now in closed session, so please go out and go back into your web, please.
Brian, we're now back from open or closed session. If you could please enable the live stream.
So we have a quorum. Yeah. We're good. Thank you, Madam Clerk. Council moved into closed session to discuss matters under open meeting exemption KS section 239 of the Municipal Act. As a result of closed session discussions, direction was provided to staff. I just want to make the comment, our closed session was recorded, so everyone knows. Council will meet again on July 13th at 5 o'clock. I need a motion of adjournment. Moved by Councilor Colburn, second by Deputy Mayor Carlson, that we adjourn. There's no discussion. A show of hands, all in favor of adjournment? Opposed? We're now adjourned. Thank you, everybody.